Okay, hello and welcome to this Blender tutorial about double tap shortcuts. I'm going to dedicate a bit of the start of this video to just explaining the importance of shortcuts. It's something that I've done in previous videos, so if you have seen other ones, this might just be repeating the same stuff. And if you're not interested in why I'm talking about this, then there are just timestamps below. But I will veer off and talk about different things other than purely the shortcut itself. So yeah, skip through, and if you just want to learn them or you already know them, then that's fine. You can find them down there. But otherwise, the main reason I'm talking about this is well, there's a few hidden shortcuts in Blender. I say hidden because when you watch a lot of videos, they might not be mentioned that frequently, and you might not necessarily notice a few features around the UI which tell you how to do these things. And in general, I'm going to talk about some of the things that you definitely shouldn't be doing if you're learning Blender. I think there's people moving from 3ds Max and Maya, and they have two very different workflows, which I'm going to briefly explain. And so the best way for you to learn Blender and get, start having fun using Blender and using it as kind of it was used before some of the updates, it's going to be much faster in time. Like for example, some things might only save you a second, but if you're doing that 100 times in a day, these things start to add up, and it just becomes a very slow workflow if you're ignoring some of these shortcuts. Just as a brief sort of idea of how to think about some of these Blender things, I'm going to talk about some ways. Say if you were using 3ds Max and you were adding a cube, 3ds Max, when I used to use it, it was very, you add something and a menu pops up right in front of you. You start typing in values. There was pretty much nothing where you wouldn't say, go in here, move this down, and then go to the sub menu and start typing it in. Even the move tool and all this sort of stuff. Right now I'm going through and I'm clicking these tools, I'm moving things around, and I just think that that is a very slow workflow that you don't need to do with Blender. Same goes for Maya. There are some other tools here. So like say I actually want to change the dimensions of this cube. Well, in Blender you go to the N key over here because the add cube only gives you the size on one dimension, but the N item menu gives you some more accurate stuff over here. So if it was 3ds Max, I'd be typing in, 3.5 meters here and start typing in 4 meters here and so on. And it's a very accurate way of working, but it's also a very slow way of working. Same with going to the tools and using them for the different purposes. So with that in mind, we'll go to the first shortcut here. And what I hope no one is doing is, if they want to select everything, I hope they're not just going to the select menu, ignoring these shortcuts that are labeled for you, and then pressing all and then none. I think pretty much anyone watching this video can hopefully agree that that is the slowest way of doing that, and it's not very nice to have to scroll through and look at these menus and then find the tool that you want. It is obviously very good if you don't know the software and you can start seeing, oh, I didn't know that I could do this. I didn't know I could do circle select with C. So you do need to look through it, but as soon as you know that it exists, take a mental note of the shortcut and start using that instead. So when it comes to selecting and deselecting, well, A is select and Alt A is deselect. But the way Blender used to work is you used to press A and then A again to deselect. So what they kind of did to hide that from users that aren't used to using Blender, to make it something that even users were kind of not having a good time with, because you'd end up having to press it several times just to confirm that you've done the action, is that they put in a quick double tap. So if I press this twice quickly, then it's also going to deselect. So when I'm working, I actually just do that instinctively because my hand is most likely kind of in that area, and I just do that. Like I don't mind the other shortcuts, and Alt A isn't that bad, but you're still having to do like a funny hand movement to get everything done. So I kind of like that, and when you get used to it, it's going to be so much quicker, especially than sort of that option, which is shouldn't be something you're doing. So another one here is, I mean, anyone that's going over to the move tool, the rotate tool, clicking on that edge and clicking, to do all this sort of stuff. I, I can see the benefit of it. Most people fall into that sort of way of doing things because it's right there and it's, it's what you're used to. But I really don't like it. I like just using things how they are in Blender, sort of laid out in Blender already. And so the rotate tool is just R, but if you want that same ball rotation, then you can just press R again, which you can do that at any point. It's not speed based like the other the other shortcut. And then you get that ball rotation, which is good for just randomly sort of just scattering objects, getting some different rotations on them for whatever you might need that for. And so when it comes to the rotate tool, you might probably also know that you can just press X, Y, and Z to rotate on those. But if I do rotate this randomly, I press X, it's still going to rotate on the world space. So rather than going to the local space and rotating on the X, Z, and Y locally, you can just double tap. So rotate X, and then X again. Z, and then Z again, and that's always going to default to the local rotations. So it's something to keep in mind. And for all this stuff, I mean, look at the bottom menu here. You can see the options are all available to you in the UI. And if I press X to rotate on the axis there, actually the local space is not labeled. So that's why this one's a little bit more hidden as a double tap, and that's kind of why I'm making this video, because the same goes for the select tool. It doesn't say you can double tap A. They don't label some of that stuff. If I go into the grab tool on a vertex, I can press G again and just start sliding that vertex, which again, I've got the move tool selected here. It's going to be so much quicker than doing that. And I couldn't even figure out this tool initially when I looked at it. So actually I've got it in vertex mode, but it's in edge by default. So if I try and move a vertex with that tool selected, you can't do it. Got to go to the vertex mode and then you can start sliding. And even then, while I'm using the tool, the shortcuts are still needing to be used or turned on here, which is again even slower. So the shortcut here is going to be G, and then we can see it in the bottom middle there. Vertex / edge slide is just G again. So G and then G, and then there's a few other nice hidden ones here, which the UI for this hasn't been updated, so it's a bit iffy. But on the top left below edit mode, you can see even and clamp, which I covered before. But turning clamp off allows it to be constrained to the edge that you're active on and move it outside of the object bounds. And G and then G, well actually if I just create an example here, G and then E is going to allow it to be even. So without even mode on, it's going to start stretching and creating something that's obviously not even. But GGE, and it's going to start snapping to the edge that you're moving it towards, with F to flip in case I want this to be just straight, because it's getting it from the top edge in that case. So that's a few little shortcuts there that are double taps. If you didn't know any, then now you do. But the main point here is you can learn this stuff from the UI, and you shouldn't have to write things like lists. You can get up cheat sheets for different shortcuts, but for the most part, you'll learn by actually seeing the options within the menus. So let's just see, transform, there's all of your different shortcuts for that. And it's definitely worth scrolling through the menus just so you can learn the shortcuts that way, but not necessarily always going here and pressing them. And yeah, that's going to just speed up your workflow. So hope it helps.